Hello and welcome to Bonnie's Eye on Film. And today I have director Kevin Shaw, who is directing One Golden Summer, which is the opening film for the Chicago International Film Festival. Hey, Kevin.
How are you, Bonnie? Thanks for having me today.
I'm doing pretty good today. We're doing pretty good today. I'm glad that I could speak with you because the Chicago International Film Festival is really one of the greatest film festivals out there. And to see that your film, One Golden Summer, is opening it up is amazing. And so when you got the word that you were going to be the opening night film, how did that feel? What did you think?
Can't really explain it. I really can't put it into words. I'm a Chicagoan, born and raised, grew up on 92nd and Stony Island, and had, not necessarily dreams of being a filmmaker, but I certainly wanted to be a storyteller and work in television, and that eventually pivoted itself into working in film and working in documentary film. So as a young kid, I never had any really dreams of putting my work into film festivals, and certainly didn't have any thought of the possibility of opening a festival as prestigious as the Chicago International Film Festival. So, I think as my career started to progress and I started to pursue opportunities to showcase my work and the stories that I was being fortunate to be able to tell. The idea of again opening a film festival like the Chicago International Film Festival. This is the 61st year of the festival. You look at all the filmmakers prior to me that have exhibited work there. It's just really a who's who in terms of cinema. So to be part of that list, and also I learned most recently that the festival, this is the second time that it's opened its festival with a documentary. So that's a new thing as well. So to have that kind of honor and privilege, it's amazing. It's amazing. We're really, really excited for the opportunity.
Now, One Golden Summer is about the 2014 Chicago Jackie Robinson West Little League. How did you come to want to do a documentary about this?
Well, I'll tell you, back in 2014, I was freelancing, basically working in between films, because that's what we do as documentary filmmakers. We're not, a lot of times, the majority of us are doing other jobs, to support ourselves, and then are able to do a longer form project like a documentary film and everything. So I was in between films in 2014 and working with one of my former clients, and still a client, but one of my former clients, ESPN. That's where I started my career at that company. And I had the opportunity to go to Williamsport for ESPN and be part of their coverage of the Little League World Series. So during that time frame, back in 2014, the big headliner of that upcoming series was a girl by the name of Monet Davis. She was a female pitcher for a team out of Philadelphia, and she was bringing the heat, and she was like the star of that series. And so a lot of the media circus was focused around her until our guys from Jackie Robinson West from Chicago started to win games, and they really fit that narrative of this underdog team that many people just thought they were happy to be there, but they were crushing their competition and really started to make an impact on the culture and really start to galvanize not only the city, but the nation who were following this as they rose to victory there at Williamsport. And so, being able to have a front row seat working that series for the television network, I watched with pride, as those guys continued on and won the U.S. championship there at the Little League World Series, and then came back home, and they were feted like champions. They had a ticker tape parade that would be reserved for Chicago Bulls or the Chicago Blackhawks. It was really an amazing moment to watch all that unfold. And then obviously, the controversy hit, where there were some allegations on whether the team and the organization had followed all the rules regarding neighborhood boundaries, had all the players, uh, were they all within a boundary that you have to be in to compete, and according to the Little League World Series rules and everything. And it was found out that that might not be the case. And long story short, obviously, we all know that the title ended up being stripped from the team, and this really heartwarming story all of a sudden became heartbreaking. And a lot of time went past, and I think before all the controversy had happened, there's another producer by the name of Bob Title. You might know Bob for some of the work that he's done with his partner George Tillman. They did the movie Soul Food. They did the barbershop movies. They've done The Hate You Give most recently, among some other great films. And Bob is from Chicago as well. Went to Columbia College, Chicago. And the Jackie Robinson West team they did a cameo in one of the barbershop movies. And so Bob had developed a relationship with the team through that cameo appearance, and was thinking about trying to do a narrative film about the whole experience, But then the controversy hit, and so he thought about pivoting and said, "Well, I might not be able to make a narrative film about the whole experience, but I could potentially do a documentary." And so, one of the things that happened after this, after the title had been stripped, was that there was a lot of legal back and forth between the coaches, between the players, and between Little League International, and between Jackie Robinson West as well, which is what a big portion of our movie kind of deals with. All the things that happened behind the scenes, and after the headlines had been written and everybody had moved on with their lives, these folks were battling back and forth for 7 years to try to potentially reinstate the title and fix reputations amongst the coaches and amongst the players and their families. And so the idea then became to have a documentary to see what would happen. Would the Jackie Robinson West families be able to have their title reinstated? And what would happen between this litigation, between this legal fight between Jackie Robinson West, the Jackie Robinson West families, and Little League International. And Bob and his producing partner on this one, Betsy Steinberg, kind of reached out to me and said, would I be interested in potentially following this story and seeing what would happen? And of course, knowing the story really intimately, having been there in Williamsport, being in Chicago, and then my background is a lot in sports storytelling, it really was just kind of a perfect marriage. And so back in 2021, we began shooting, began doing interviews and our research. And it really wasn't until 2021 that there was any sort of legal settlement that became between all of those different parties that I had mentioned before. And so from 2021 to now, we were working on this film, doing a ton of interviews with all the interested folks and participants, editing, and getting it all ready for its debut on Wednesday, October 15th.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Kevin, and everybody out there, the film is excellent. It's excellent. And I like the way that you approached it. We are so proud of that Little League team. I mean, I remember it. I mean, it was like everybody was invested into these young kids that were 12 and 13 years old. And in watching the film, I went from joy to anger to sadness in a way, because what these little kids went through, I'm not talking about the adults. I'm talking about the adults and the media that really attacked the little kids. I mean, when one of the kids said that his teacher called him a cheater, I was through. I was ready to go to that school and find that teacher. Now the kid is grown now, but still. And I also enjoyed the way that you interviewed the kids now as adults. And that excuse me, helped me see that they're okay. You know, most of them are okay. But I was interested in you going after some of the people that started the controversy and they actually spoke with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this whole controversy really started because there was a rival Little League baseball coach by the name of Chris James, who was from Evergreen Park and coached one of the Evergreen Park teams. The film will get into this, but Jackie Robinson West had played a game against Evergreen Park, and the score was a very lopsided affair, and it really left a poor taste in that coach's mouth, in the community's mouth, etc. And so when they went on to win the U.S. championship, this coach was kind of um, you know, I wouldn't say provoked, but there were people in the community there at Evergreen Park that asked the coach to potentially look into this neighborhood eligibility requirement that is part of the Little League international rules. And so he was the one that kind of started to look into where people lived and everything. And he brought up the case to Little League International, asking if they would look into their paperwork. And Little League International responded, said, "Yeah, we've done all these investigations, and everything seems clear on our end." And at that point, Chris James had kind of dropped it. He said, "Okay, well, I've done as far as I can do." Um, a person comes to Chris James, another acquaintance comes to him and says, "Hey, one of my friends is a local reporter here in the city, and he'd like to take it up." And so this reporter then dug deeper and found some information that I guess Little League was not aware of. And his reporting then opened up the entire case again and really then made Little League decide, well, we need to do something. And the thing that we're going to do is we're going to strip the title from the Jackie Robinson West. And so, in the course of that, the individual, the whistleblower, Chris James, he became kind of the face of of a lot of people's anger there. You know, a lot of people's ire. They're really upset with him because he was the one that initially brought up the complaint. And you know, he was gracious enough to tell his side of the story for the film, and I do think it might paint another picture that's complicated for people. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's very easy for us to try to, you know, to put labels on folks. You know, he's good, he's bad, et cetera, to find a villain in the story very easily. And I think when you hear Chris James's story and his point of view on things, you know, you might reconsider some of that. You know, you might think about your impression and perception of him once you hear the things that he has to say. And so, to me, it was very important to have him in the film. I don't think films are super interesting when they're just coming from one point of view. I think you need to have multiple points of view in movies. You know, they create conflict and they definitely create engagement and conversation, and they challenge the viewer. You know, and so I always want to do that when I'm trying to make a film. I want to challenge your perceptions of things, and I think people, especially from Chicago, who remember the story, are going to come into the movie with a certain perception, and that might get tweaked a little bit once they watch the film, or it might not, you know, which is fine. But I definitely want to certainly challenge people and not make things just so cut and dry, because that's not the world we live in. It's a lot more complicated.
Well, you know, after I watched the film, excuse me, and I was one of the ones that said, okay, you know, they going after these kids because they black.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. After watching the film, though, and I may be wrongly, I pushed the blame on the Little League Association and the media, because where the media built them up, the media helped tear them down.
mhm,
And as far as I'm concerned, the Little League Association didn't do their due diligence. So therefore, they're going to blame the kids, but all the way through. I mean, it would be different if they stopped them before they went to the area or the
right,
nationals before going to the
right,
World League, but they let them go all the way through and win.
yeah.
And then they start. So I really think I got mad at them, and I think that they should have reinstated the title, or at least give them some kind of credit instead of stripping them of everything. But Kevin, what did you learn that you didn't know? What affected you at going through all of this and at the end of it that affected you before, in a way, before you went into it?
Well, I think it's some of the things that you mentioned there in terms of responsibility. From my point of view, I kind of see that this big corporation here in Little League International, like you said, didn't do everything that they should have done in the very beginning. When you watch the film and you realize, and this is information that came out through the lawsuits and through the litigation that was going back and forth and through the discovery that they went through. You realize that Little League International didn't have one of these boundary maps that basically highlighted the boundary for Jackie Robinson West. They didn't have one in their office files when the team was competing in 2014, and the last boundary map that they had dated was from like 2007, according to these emails that were in Discovery that we have in the movie. And so, when you hear that, there's got to be some accountability for that error. I do believe also when you look at race, I probably think that this organization didn't think that these families would come back with lawyers of their own and fight back as hard as they did. Now, even though the families did end up splintering from their lawyer and started to ended up um, I'm sorry for a second, ended up suing Bill Haley and everything, and which added a whole nother layer of complications to stuff. Um, you know, it's still it still made you think about, well, where was the responsibility and the accountability from the organization to have all their ducks in a row and have all the paperwork already. Like you mentioned, none of this would have happened potentially if they had their paperwork in order, and they didn't. And because the Jackie Robinson West story was so large and magnificent, and everybody had gotten on board with the bandwagon, and it really just kind of filled that anecdote and those things that we love of the underdog team, coming out and being in a space that they might not usually be in, and they're excelling and they're great kids and all that. um, they got swept up in that love as well, and they ended up making a lot of money off of it too, and a lot of popularity off of it as well. And once you know things came out and there was some difficulty and some adversity that might upset that narrative, instead of trying to work with everybody and be accountable and acknowledge mistakes that were made on their part, they just cut them. They just cut the
Mhm.
Jackie Robinson West team, and that's where you get really upset about how the things were handled. I will say also from like the media perspective, and this is something that the movie interrogates as well. When you look at how they portrayed, our guys from Chicago, and they immediately just label them as a group of kids that are coming from the roughest part of the city, Chicago, gun violence, one of the worst in the nation, but they're succeeding despite all of that. You don't even really sit there and do the due diligence to learn where some of these kids really came from and what kind of family backgrounds they really came from. And if you did that, you'd realize that they came from middle class backgrounds here in the city, and they weren't coming from the rough parts of Chicago, and they weren't infected with gang violence or gun violence or anything like that. These were just regular middle class kids that anybody could still relate to. They didn't have to relate to them just based off of that negative perception of Black people and negative perception of our city and everything. And so, you hold the media accountable for pushing that narrative as well. And there's a lot of instances in the film that kind of shows how they just did that. And that still happens today in terms of how the media will push certain stereotypes. And that's not right either.
Mm-mm.
That's not right either. And so I don't know what it will take for us to move on from that. But that was certainly an aspect of this story that I wanted to get out there and really investigate and hold a mirror up to.
Well, you did, and you did it well. When speaking with the young men now, you know, the general perception, it seemed like most of them said, okay, that's in the past. We know what we did. We did it. We did it correctly. We won. And now we're moving forward. But did you find that with all of them? Were some of them still stuck?
I don't think any of them are still stuck. Certainly, the effects of the bullying has created trauma for them, and I think probably all of them still live with it in some way, but some are doing better than others, and that's something that again we look at in the film where some guys, they had a really tough time in high school. That label of being labeled a cheater had really affected them, and it was something that they constantly had to overcome. And I think even now, still, as guys have excelled, there's a lot of them that are still playing baseball, that have played collegiately, that are playing professionally. When they learn of their backstory and learn that they played in the Little League World Series, and they learn that they're from the Jackie Robinson West team, well, that's the first thing that comes to people's minds. Oh, that was the team that did this or did that. And so then they have to sit back and explain, no, that's not exactly what happened. So they're still living with that trauma in a way. But I will also say that the one thing that I really took heart from and really felt hopeful about was something that one of the players had mentioned, Marquise Jackson, saying that despite all the negativity that happened with them losing the title and all the internet trolling and bullying and trauma that they experienced from that time, it was still one of the most memorable moments of his life. And he leans more onto the positive, than the negative, because what happened when they were playing all those games, not only in Williamsport, but all the games prior to that, he found a friend group, and it was more than friends. These guys are his brothers for life. And these guys are still tight, still close together, even though they're all on different sides of the country and everything like that, and have went their separate ways. They still communicate with one another, and I think that bond there is so strong, and was built by this whole experience. So I look at that and I say, well, that's amazing, because most people could have been broken
Yeah.
through this type of experience, but instead they look at the positive and move and are looking to move forward with their life, and realizing that this is not this moment and this experience of being in the Little League World Series and everything that happened afterward. It's not going to be their entire life. It's not going
Mhm.
to define their life. It's just going to be one chapter. And they all have decided that we're going to learn from that chapter, and it's going to help make our life and our future better.
What has been their reaction to the film?
Yeah, man, they've been I think it was a lot for them, to relive all of that, those experiences, the good and the bad, and where they are now. They really enjoyed it. They loved seeing themselves there, and had to, it took them back. It took them back. Imagine if you were, you know, a young kid and you're seeing yourself as a young kid doing something, excelling in the thing that you love. They love playing baseball. It brought them right back to those beautiful memories that they had of being in Williamsport and playing in those games, and meeting all the different people that they met, some of the kids from different countries and everything, those experiences, being in the dorms there at Williamsport. Um, they, again, like I said, kind of, they look at the positive things more than some of the negative stuff that they experienced, and that's what they cherish.
Well, I'm telling you, it's I love the way you did it. And I'm not going to hold you too much longer because I know you have a busy schedule. But when you look at creating a documentary, because and I love documentaries. But when you look at creating a documentary, how does your mind work? How do you decide, number one, what to do? Because your documentaries are really into things, especially around Chicago, or things that have affected people of color or Black people. But how does your mind work when you're doing a documentary?
Oh man, I don't know. It's something where if you could just peek inside, you'd see a whole lot of chaos going on in there. I think it starts from research. So I had the personal research of being there for one, right, and then it's really trying to read as much as you can about the subject that you're doing. So in this instance, read all the articles and everything that was written about the entire Jackie Robinson West experience. And I think from there, you kind of start to look at who are the people that you might want to interview, that you want to participate in this film. And, 9 times out of 10, you get most of the folks that you want to have, but sometimes you don't get everybody. So then you just think about, okay, well, I have these folks that are going to participate. What are the specific questions and things that I want to ask them? And very much like we're having right here, I really lean on the interview and really have a very conversational interview with people that it can last a couple hours and stuff. And what I found is that a lot of times people want to open up, and they kind of treat it like maybe a little bit of a therapy experience, and I'm that person that they can kind of open up to, and I try to make it that way, and really build a space where they feel safe, and most importantly, they feel heard, you know. And I don't bring myself or my opinions into the space. It's just really an opportunity to ask questions and really try to figure out, what makes a person say certain things, do certain things, and give them an opportunity to tell their side of the story. That doesn't mean that I'm lobbing softballs all day too, though. I will have some critical takes and conversations to have with people. Um, but I believe that there's just an area of trust that has been built probably a little bit before the camera starts rolling. I usually will talk with people ahead of time, and we kind of build a little bit of a maybe a little bit of a bond before we actually get rolling on an interview. So in this instance, knowing that the interviews are going to be so key to the success of the storytelling, this is really like a testimonial for all these folks to tell their different sides of the story. I really wanted to be cognizant of creating a good space for people to be able to do that. And then I think once you get all that material, yeah, it's like, how do you wrap your head around it? And that's when you have great collaborators, And so, like in this instance, my main collaborator creatively was our writer and editor, David Simpson, who's a great filmmaker in his own right here in the Chicagoland area, and has worked on a number of great movies and documentary films. And he and I just had a number of different conversations about what I took from a lot of those interviews. And then he did the kind of the dirty work of taking what I told him and looking for different things and avenues and stories within those interviews that have been told, and really kind of creating a structure and a scene structure. We would call it bricks. Like he would make a brick, a scene brick of the first time they get to Williamsport, for instance, or those kind of things, and we would just take it brick by brick. And it takes a long time to do this. You don't do these things in 2 weeks. This edit took like 3 years basically, with all the back and forth with it and stuff. And so that layering, building the movie scene by scene with a great collaborator like him, like David, is really how you end up, flushing a story like this out. And I think I knew from the research that I did that there were themes that were emerging, the media coverage, race, Chicago, stereotype, and I knew that I had people talking about these themes in our interviews, so that would give me the opportunity to kind of dive a little bit deeper, and not just present of this is what happens timeline. The 10 years of 11 years basically has surpassed from this event, so it gives us an opportunity to look back and kind of look at those things and look how the dots connect, and kind of see how those themes emerge, and how our perceptions might be changed, once we kind of really have an opportunity to investigate and look at things from a different eye, a little bit more critically and stuff. And so, it's just patience after that, patience that you'll get it done, that you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, it takes a long time to get these things done, but eventually you do. And it's like, just imagine you have a big mold of clay and you're just chopping away at it, and you're eventually creating this beautiful statue or beautiful portrait of something. And it takes a long time to do that. But that's kind of how I see, the whole filmmaking process, especially with documentary filmmaking, and especially with like this film here at One Golden Summer.
Well, the one thing I have to say before I let you go, Kevin, is that in watching it, I don't know how you and your editor did such a great job of not of giving a all-purpose look at it, because I did not feel as if you were putting your spin on it, on what the story is. I felt that you actually gave us the true story of how it was, and you did a great job overall in showing all the sides, and allowing us to, at the end of the film, feel the way we feel, whether we still mad, whether we understand a little bit of what happening, or is there some forgiveness there. I don't forgive I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, the Little League, International, whoever they are, need their butts whipped. That's just the way I feel.
You said that. I can't say that. No,
Well,
that's fine. I think that's fine that you have that opinion. And I think other people have other opinions as well. And that's great. And I believe that hearing that from you really warms my heart, really shows that, we did what we intended to do. And yeah, the audience is intelligent. You know what I mean? You guys, the viewers are intelligent. They're going to come up with whatever they think they want to. I don't ever, I don't personally love movies that, especially documentaries, that might be trying to manipulate you into thinking one way or the other. So I really try to avoid that. And it easily could have been done on this particular film, and I didn't feel like that was the right way to do it. Just put things out there, and people are going to make, they're going to have their opinions and make their own feelings known and stuff, and that's fine. And I'd much rather have people debate about the issues that are brought up in the movie than just be like, oh, that was good, and then move on to the next thing. If you're thinking about the film afterward and you're debating about it and you're talking about it and you're telling a friend, oh, I saw this film, you need to check it out here, check it out there, then we've done our job, and that's what we do this for.
Well, one last question. What happens to the films after they leave the film festival?
Yeah, with this particular film, we're looking for distribution. We're having talks with people, and the documentary landscape has changed a lot. It's taken a lot longer to have deals made, but the ideal would be to land on some streaming platform out there, and that's what we believe is going to happen. It's just going to take a little bit longer to announce something, so I can't say anything right now. But that's the goal, and we're feeling really, really good and confident about it.
Well, this is definitely a film that needs to be seen. So everybody, Chicago International Film Festival goes from the 15th to the 26th, but the film One Golden Summer is going to be shown on the 14th.
It's going to be on the 15th. So
On
the
the
opening
15th.
night is on the 15th. And then we have two other screenings. Unfortunately, I think the opening night screening is sold out.
Right.
But you can sign up to the standby list. So if any tickets do become available at the last minute, you can have an opportunity to do that. That's also for our last screening on the 26th at the Logan Center in Hyde Park at the campus of University of Chicago. But we are happy to announce that we have one additional screening because of the demand. The demand was so high, which, thank you, Chicago. We do have an additional screening that has tickets available now. That's on October 18th, Saturday, 2 p.m. at the Chicago History Museum. So love to get a lot of people out for that event as well. So there is one opportunity there to go see it. So hopefully you guys will come out and enjoy the show, and we might have some special guests there as well. We do these Q&As afterwards, so so we might have some people there as well to come out and see. So it'd be great if you could make it.
Well, I'm planning on coming, especially to the Chicago History Museum. They do wonderful, great things there. And
Right.
so I'll be there. Everybody look it up. Go to Chicago International Film Festival's website, as well as I'm sure it's on the Chicago History Museum's website also. So make sure you go. You got to see this film. Thank you, Kevin, for joining me today.
Bonnie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
And to you too, keep your eye to the sky. This is Bonnie's Eye on Film.